Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Alta Live. My name is Beth Spotswood. I work at Alta, and I am so excited to welcome you to today's conversation on unmasking Zorro. We're going to speak with Gustavo Arellano, who is, as I have said in the description for this event, he is such an Alta Live regular that he is the norm to our cheers. He wrote an article in the latest issue of Alta Journal, and really just talking about kind of a new crop of shows and comics that finally might accurately represent Gustavo's favorite masked crusader, Zorro. So we're going to talk about that today. A bit about Gustavo, if you don't know him, which if you don't, you absolutely should. He's the author of Orange County Personal History and Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America. He's a writer for the Los Angeles Times and has been an essayist and reporter for various publications. As long as a frequent commentator on TV, he's the former editor of OC Weekly, and penned the award-winning Ask a Mexican column. In fact, we got a question via email for you today, Gustavo, about your Ask a Mexican costume. He's won a mess of awards. He's incredibly talented. You'll read his whole bio on Alta's website. He's fantastic, and it is always an absolute joy to talk to him privately, publicly, professionally. He's the best. Before we dive in, my sales pitch for Alta Journal. You guys, this is a killer issue. This is, we get better and better and better. If you have been with Alta for a long time and let your membership or subscription die off, now is the time to renew. Our magazine is spectacular. It is award-winning and it comes to you quarterly, $50 a year. Gets you 4 beautiful issues of Alta Journal, as well as a special gift. Right now, it's a collection of every cartoon that's appeared. We have cartoons on our back issue in the first 5 years of Alta. We do free events like this every week, except for next week. It's Thanksgiving, but Alta Live is free. We are so excited to host the California Book Club. Tomorrow, we're welcoming Gary Phillips to talk about his book, Violent Spring, which is going to be really exciting. We hosted a really cool event last night at the Huntington in Pasadena. So if you're not a member of the Alta community yet, you're here at Alta Live. You're in the crew. Join as a subscriber. We would really appreciate your support. With that, I will shut up. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask questions for Gustavo. There is a chat. I love seeing where everyone is zooming in from. Ed from East LA, I saw you last night. It's so great to see you. Hello to, there's all sorts of people here. Orange County, Ramona, California.
Ramona.
Is Ramona a place in California? New
Oh,
York
yeah.
City?
There's an amazing nonprofit there called Frosted Faces Foundation. That's where we adopted Cosmo, our rescue dog, where I stand. And this is the Cosmo Cavern, named in his honor.
I met your dog via internet. Colorado, Maine, New York City. It's so great to see you all. So please ask your questions, your Zorro questions, really your Gustavo questions. He can talk about literally anything. We're going to chat for about a half an hour. This interview will be recorded and posted to altaonline.com today. I have just flown back up from Burbank this morning. I'm here in Nevada, California. Gustavo, where are you?
I am in Big Bad Santana, California, where
Oh, yeah.
this is surrounded by books in the one progressive area of Orange County, but that's a whole other conversation.
That is a whole, and you wrote about that. We had that conversation on the pages of Alta Journal.
Yeah, we did.
Also, just while you're in the Cosmo Cavern, I want to give a shout out to your Instagram live every Tuesday night, the Gute Gang, which I am a proud member. It is so fun. If you're on Instagram, follow Gustavo and you can watch his live show where he does kind of an Ask Me Anything. It is so much fun. There are rules, there are games, they do shots. It's really, really fun. I encourage you to tune
Thank
in on
you.
that. All right, so Zorro. For those of us, my first introduction to Zorro was that Antonio Banderas movie from the 90s. But will you give us kind of a brief history of who is the character of Zorro? Where did he first appear? And where did audiences first get to know him?
So the mythology of Zorro, he is of Spanish descent who lives in California, going from the period when California was still a part of Spain to turning into a part of Mexico. And now here come those evil Yankees coming from the East Coast, ready to turn California into part of the United States. He is the creation of an author named Johnson McCullers, and it started as a group of serials that would first came out in newspapers, then came out in their own publications. And I actually have the whole series here. Boom, Zorro, 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 all the original ones of Johnson McCullers. So he started publishing that, and there's more books, by the way, but I'm not going to show them all. So he started publishing them 1917, 1918, around there, and he proved such a popular character that Douglas Fairbanks, one of the great silent screen actors, decided to adapt the very first one, The Curse of Capistrano, into his film. It became an immediate blockbuster, also called The Curse of Capistrano. So the Zorro that we think of today was the one that Douglas Fairbanks really embodied. Swashbuckling, daring do, handsome, not a ne'er do well. He was very much someone of honor, trying to fight against the evil government, whether it was the Spanish crown, the Mexican crown, or the Americans, and always, of course, pining for love, and just immediately became a smash. So this is 1920, and you think how many other characters are still playing from the 1920s? Like the Wizard of Oz is still going on, and really Zorro. And what's amazing about this Zorro character is that every decade since 1920, there has been at least one film or one television series created in each decade, in English, in Spanish, in Italian, in Hindi. This is a character at this point that's global, that's worldwide. And so for Alta, I decided to do like a review of the most recent Zorro production, which was an Amazon series that debuted earlier this year.
So the Zorro Amazon series, I have not watched it, is alive. And well, first let's talk about those kind of early iterations of Zorro, the ones with Douglas Fairbanks, which, as you point out, in your Zorro is supposed to be a Latin guy. Is he Spanish? Is he Mexican? What
It's
is
interesting
Zorro?
because in the original incarnation, he was of quote unquote pure Spanish blood. But what is pure Spanish blood, anyways? That's a whole other conversation. And then even though we think of him as Spanish, he starts getting connected to a more Mexican identity. He becomes, because he also gets connected. We talk about, he's a hero of old California. And so, who was the great avenger of the poor in old California, at least in the transition to California being part of the United States? Joaquin Murrieta. This idea of someone always fighting on the side of right. So Zorro becomes an icon of the Chicano movement, even at the same time as Disney's making like a series about him, as George Hamilton creates a movie called Zorro the Gay Blade, which is as campy as the title says. So in the popular imagination, people think of him as Mexican, even as it's mostly white people playing Zorro, until, of course, the film that you mentioned starring Antonio Banderas, Anthony Hopkins, who's Welsh, as the original Zorro, and then his daughter, Catherine Zeta-Jones, another Welsh person, as someone playing a pure-blooded or a Spaniard, who had really tan skin. So we loved that film, my family growing up, and we thought, Catherine Zeta-Jones, oh, she has to be Mexican. So we're going to embrace her too.
All right. So you've brought us kind of through Zorro of the. Do you have a favorite of those? I guess when was that movie? That was the 90s.
It was like the mid 90s. I was still in high school. So maybe 95, 96. That one. Oh my God. Antonio Banderas, of course, was already the newest Latin lover that everyone was
Yeah.
swooning over. And look, he's from Spain, but his skin, I mean, I'm lighter skinned than Antonio Banderas. He's pretty swarthy. Same thing with Catherine Zeta Jones. Yeah, we thought that Anthony Hopkins as Don Diego de la Vega was kind of a stretch, but who cares? It's Anthony Hopkins. And what I love about that movie, and I saw it recently, I think when was it playing? I might have streamed. I probably streamed it off of Disney because that was a Disney production. Is that it got Zorro at its best has that same spirit of the original Zorro. It's swashbuckling. It has to be fun. And also, unlike other masked Avengers or Caped Crusaders, because Zorro, by the way, was the first superhero to have both. He is still a human, kind of like Batman in a sense. Except Batman, of course, has all these creations, and he's also in the 20th century. Zorro is very much a product of 1850s California. So he has his whip, he has his sword, and he has his horses, and he has his crew around him. That's
And
it. But
Zorro doesn't have a superhero. He doesn't have a skill of what do you call it?
yeah, a
He
superpower. Yeah, no, his
superpower. He can't
superpower.
fly. He can't be invisible. Can't stretch. He's not Aquaman.
He's not the Thing or the Human Torch. My favorite superheroes are the Fantastic Four. No, Zorro's superpower is his wit, is his whoosh, his whip, and also the fact that he could put on a simple black mask and no one could tell. Because remember, that's Zorro is the alter ego of Don Diego de la Vega. So Don Diego de la Vega is still very much an aristocrat of the era. He's trying to figure out what's going to be next for his estate and in different iterations. So in this Amazon Prime series, the one that I reviewed, it starts off as a murder mystery. His father, who was Zorro before him, there it is. Oh my gosh. Like just seeing it, he gets murdered. And so new
The
Zorro
dad
tries.
gets murdered.
Yeah, his dad gets murdered. Yes, his dad gets murdered, and so the son, who ends up becoming Zorro, first of all, he has to assume the Zorro identity. He also has to fight another Zorro. He's not this person. I'm not going to give too much away, but this person's not a counterfeit Zorro. In fact, this Zorro claims their own lineage from Don Diego de la Vega's dad. So it becomes when I was seeing it, I'm like, oh man, it started to get. Is it going to get too complicated? But it's not. It is really, I did not know what I was expecting coming into it, but I am such a huge fan of it. You look at that Zorro, handsome guy, his long lost love, beautiful, kind of a steampunk Chicana, because she's wearing a top hat the entire time. And the villains are just so over the top. It is just such an amazing series. And there is like this undercurrent of political ideology going in. And that's what I landed at, that this Zorro in many ways is probably the second best iteration. I'll say what the best one is later on, in the sense of that it really is a reflection of its times. And where are we in California? We don't know what's going on in California, like we don't know what's going on in the United States. And this Zorro, even though it's set in 18, I think this one is 1840s California, it nails it.
Oh, that was going to be my question. Is it set in the past?
Yes. So Zorro at its best, it has to be set in the past. Now, that's not going to mean that all Zorros are set in the past. Like one of the things that I also talked about is that there's so many Zorro projects in production. That
Right.
doesn't mean that they're going to be made yet. And one of them is, oh, this one's going to be cool if it happens. It would be an animated version of a comic book involving Zorro and Django from Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained in a post-apocalyptic world. So
And Quentin Tarantino is involved in that concept.
in the concept, yeah, absolutely.
So it's
So
legitimately in Hollywood moving forward with Quentin Tarantino's involvement, which I would think lends it some, reality of coming true at some point.
yeah, I mean, we never know. We know how projects are going, but I mean, some stars that are attached to Zorro projects. You have Wilmer Valderrama. He's doing his own comedic take, and he's producing it as well. And he's going to star for Disney. That one's in production. Robert Rodriguez, the famous director, he wants to do his own Zorro movie. There's another one that's supposed to come out on Paramount Plus. When we published this, it was supposed to come on the fall. We're not going into the winter, but we know those delays, but it's starring some famous French guy, but it's supposed to be a comedic take on Zorro as well. So yeah, the projects are just coming through. And I talked to the gentleman who basically runs the company that licenses Zorro, because Zorro is in the public domain, the character, but not necessarily everything. And he's saying he's getting ideas for Zorro projects all the time. Opera Santa Barbara, this past year, they did an opera based on Zorro, which was sold out. I mean, there's a Zorro board game that sold out immediately. People love their Zorro.
Why do you think that is?
I, Part of it, again, is because Zorro is a person. Zorro is not Wolverine, which God bless Wolverine. Zorro's not Deadpool. God bless Deadpool. Zorro, in many ways, also, he's like a G-rated character. Like these films, you never see nudity in them. You see love, of course. You see violence, but this is something that everyone can enjoy. I think my mom was showing it, like she took us to the theater, then she bought us a bootlegged version of the Zorro one with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Antonio Banderas. Then she bought one in Spanish, and we played it so much that the tape broke. That's how much we loved it. We were all loving these films. So that's one part. And another part, again, Zorro is the eternal. This is someone who does have power. Again, he's a member of the gentry, he's a member of the elite, and yet he sides with the underdogs. He's against tyranny. This is someone that anyone, all of us underdogs, will always be rooting for this person.
So like a Robin Hood kind of.
Yeah, like a Robin Hood, but also very much in the tradition of Latin American Avengers, people who side with the poor. Also, because Robin Hood was always, he actually I cannot remember the full story of Robin Hood right now, except that he fought against the sheriff of Nottingham, and he had Friar Tuck and all that good stuff. But with Zorro, he's just so relatable. You like sort of that dual life, like Don Diego de la Vega. He's kind of a fop, if we want to be honest. He's always too
Kind of a what?
proper. A fop, FOP.
What's a fop?
A fop is a gentleman who is a little bit too precious, a Beau
Oh, okay.
Brummel,
Okay.
that type of person. Not a bad word, trust me.
Okay.
But yeah, so Don Diego de la Vega's kind of a fop. He's always getting embarrassed. He can't get the girl, but as Zorro, he could do anything that he wants. And I think people love that duality. Who are we in public and who are we secretly?
Fascinating. All right, we're getting some questions, but I didn't get through all of my questions yet, and I have the microphone. Um,
Yes.
okay, so why do you think there are all of these new kind of versions of Zorro, as you mentioned, either Amazon's got this new show or there's stuff in production. Is Zorro making a comeback now? And if so, why?
I definitely think so. Because again, as I said earlier, there's been at least one Zorro production for the screen, whether small or big screen, going back to 1920, going back to that original Douglas Fairbanks silent movie. Now you're seeing a whole bunch of them because I just think there's more opportunities. Like, you have Paramount, that's a streamer. You have Amazon, that's a streamer. Disney Plus, that's a streamer. So there's just more opportunities than ever before. But more importantly, the reason why there's so many Zorro productions is because they work. People have that demand. We are at a time, we've had a rough couple of years. We don't have to mention any names or any things, but we're looking for a hero. And we're looking for a hero that's really going to stand con, like in Spanish, you would say los de abajo, the underdogs. And that's who Zorro is. And we're also looking for someone that's relatable. And again, Zorro is, at least in most iterations, Zorro is a human. When he's going to team up with Django to fight zombies or however it goes, we'll see how that goes. But like, you don't see Zorro with guns. No, I don't know if he ever does. I don't think he does use a gun. I think because we're in the 1850s, so you do have those blunderbusses or those old school guns, but Zorro's fine with his whip and with his sword. And of course, the Z. My favorite part, by the way, I have to mention it because I mentioned it in my piece, was the villain is so over the top, the governor, that at one point he's drinking wine and Zorro goes up to him and the villain's so onerous. I swear to you, I yelled, "Give him the Z." And that's what Zorro did. And I laughed when it happened. And the best part, the governor, he sees the Z on his chest. He's like, eh, and he keeps drinking the wine. So that's the other thing I think about Zorro. So much of where we're at with superheroes, Deadpool notwithstanding, is just so heavy, so morose, and things are so like, ugh. We want some camp. We want some levity. And Zorro is that. It's not a comedy though. Like it's a wonderful, wonderful series. Got renewed for a second season. Should probably be debuting sometime next year. I'll be the first person to binge it.
Is there some component to representation just of a Latin star in terms of a superhero or a vigilante on the side of justice?
So, as part of my research, I interviewed this gentleman, Stephen Andes. He's a professor now. He's at Bucknell University, and he wrote this awesome book, Zorro's Shadow: How a Mexican Legend Became America's First Superhero. So he digs into all of that history, and he loved the series as well because there's so much representation. And the other thing about the previous Zorro iterations, it was mostly, okay, here is the Spaniards just fighting amongst themselves. This series has the Yankees, aka the Americans, the Gabachos coming in. You have French immigrants, which really depicts 1850s Los Angeles. It gets so many things right on so many levels, and more importantly, there's a big indigenous component, and they're treated as humans. So yes, there's some dignified, but let's not try to trivialize them as the strong silent Indian. No, they are humans. They are part of the Zorro mythology. So it gets so many things right. There's still some things that it gets wrong. There's still too much of the sex pot appeal. You do have a Spaniard playing Zorro, which technically is correct, but like When is an actual Mexican supposed to go in to play Zorro? Gael Garcia Bernal was attached to a Zorro project that sadly never went through. And Wilmer Valderrama, nothing against you, man, but I think you're Venezuelan or Colombian. You're not Mexican. But hey, we embrace anyone who wants to be part of the Zorro universe.
I mean, there's a lot wrong with Wilmer Valderrama. He was involved. If you read the tabloids in the 90s, he was not so nice to the young actresses of his day.
Well,
Um,
Zorro cannot be problematic.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. So, in terms of, all right, so I've got to address some of these questions because we're getting so much. All right, Guy Whitaker asks, did Guy Williams do justice to the character?
You're talking about, of course, the Zorro television series in 1950s with Disney. I've only seen some of them. I enjoyed it. I mean, it is a little bit over the top. It's Disney. Everything was over the top. But the grand judge of that would be my mom. When she migrated to the United States as a 9-year-old in the early 1960s, first to Hollister, part of they'd have to work in the fields, picking garlic up in Gilroy as well. So part of what relieved them was seeing television. And one of her favorite shows was Zorro because she could relate to Zorro because it was vaguely Mexican. So Guy Williams, I'll always have respect for that particular Zorro series.
I love when you talk about your mom. Gustavo's written about his mom in Alta. You should check it out. All right, what do you have a favorite Zorro? Charles asks, do you have a favorite Zorro comic run?
Oh, I wish I could say I've read the comics. I cannot say I have just yet. But look, I need to buy all the Zorros now. I am a confirmed Zorro holic after this. I already was, and now I just got to buy all like those. I gotta buy them. I gotta buy them.
Okay, more questions about what are your thoughts about this version of Zorro, that version of Zorro, but here we are. All right, so Charles in Santa Ana. What about Sean Gordon Murphy's recent Zorro Man of the Dead, which sets Zorro in modern times?
I think that's interesting. Again, like the classic, I do think the classic Zorro needs to have that tension between where because he is a person in a society in flux in with the Spaniards leaving but the Californios still there who of course claim they're pure Spanish blood, the Mexican government trying to impose its way, and the Americans, you see them on the way, and this Zorro series really sets it up for a perfect second season where the Americans are coming in and ready to take over California, setting him in modern times. I mean, there needs to be that tension. So but I love anything that's going to reimagine Zorro. And that's the thing. The people who license Zorro, they're very, very protective of the trademark. They're not just gonna give away the likeness to his representation and confirm any project that just comes their way. So I trust their taste. I mean, so far so good. So I can't wait to read that one as well.
All right, I got to pop into my email. We're getting some questions via email also, which is also great. You can always do that, folks. All right. Well, what happened to Ask a Mexican column? Will it ever become a collection?
Oh, it's already a collection. Came out in 2007 book. And really briefly, Ask a Mexican was a column in which I answered any and all questions about Mexicans. I retired the column in 2017. Besides, I have a way better co-column now for Alta Journal called Ask a Californian. Myself and my co-columnista, Stacy Grenwood. Oh, I always forget her last name.
Woods.
Woods, yes, Stacy Grenrock Woods. We are, we're the what did we call ourselves? Right, mentioned her. We're the two old men in the Muppet Show where we just like,
Oh, Stratler and
yeah,
Waldorf.
yes, yeah, exactly. We laugh at California and we take all your questions about Californians. And in fact, we've done Alta Live, Ask a Californian, and I'm sure we'll do it again next year.
Oh, yes. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that their column was nominated for an upcoming Los Angeles Press Club award for humor column.
And it's just so much fun to do that. So yeah, if ask me anything about California, and I'll have an answer, and Stacy will have an answer, and ever the twain shall meet.
Ed, who I met for the first time last night, folks, when you come to Alta events, you get to hang out with us in real life. It is so nice to meet people in person. Ed asks, how did the people who own the rights to Zorro come into possession of the franchise?
So it's so interesting. So Johnson McCullers, he left his estate to a gentleman whose name escapes me right now, but it's in the story, and it's his son who now runs the estate. So they just lucked into this multi-million-dollar franchise. So again, Zorro the character, he has now entered the public domain, but like the things like the Z, the mask, like certain things. I'm not the best. I am not a copyright lawyer. I am a libel lawyer though in real life, so I could talk about libel, but not trademark and copyright.
Wait, are you really a libel lawyer
No,
in
I'm
real
not.
life?
But I
Oh,
have had to deal with so much damn libel stuff from my times at my previous newspaper that I could basically be a libel lawyer at this point.
fair enough, fair enough. All right, so if we were to watch, if you were to, if folks here have not seen it, any version of Zorro or vaguely understand it, and we're like, all right, Gustavo, we will commit to one version of Zorro. We will watch one movie or start one TV show. Where do we go?
I would again start with the Anthony Hopkins, Antonio Banderas one because
Oh,
that's
really?
short, an hour and a half. It's enjoyable. You get the whole mythology, the whole shebang. It's a really good movie. It's an entertaining movie. Don't get me wrong. The Amazon series is incredible, but it's 10 episodes, 1 hour each. So it would be a commitment. So at least start with there.
Yeah.
You'll love it. Then go to the Amazon one. Then, if you want to get a more serious but brilliant take on Zorro, take the best one of them all, which is Isabel Allende, the amazing, legendary Chilean novelist who did, of course, House of the Spirits. She did her own take on Zorro, which specifically tied him to the indigenous heritage of Southern California. It was a complete reimagining of Zorro, a little bit more serious, but a brilliant, brilliant novel.
What's it called?
It's called, oh, I cannot
We
remember
had
the
her,
name
she
right now.
was a California book club author, but we did House of the Spirits.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, that
isn't
because
that,
that's the iconic one. But yeah,
yeah.
like and just think about it though. Isa here is a woman from South America wanting to do something on Zorro. And like when the publicity came out for that, she said, I always loved Zorro. And it's a dream for me to imagine Zorro in my particular take.
All right, we also have a shout out. They miss you. Wait, I scrolled past it. Did you do live events at a library? You're missed at
Oh, at the Newport Beach Public
the
Library, I was
Newport Beach
supposed to
Public
do something,
Library.
but I had to cancel it. I know I'm such a jerk. I really, truly am sorry for that. But work calls, that's all I could say on that particular date.
Oh, isn't Isabel Sue points out, isn't Isabel Allende's book called Zorro?
Yes, duh, Zorro. Oops, Zorro. Just straight up Zorro. A brilliant book, though. Brilliant book. Amazing.
All right, Gustavo, I know you are incredibly busy and have a million projects going on. One last question for you before I let you get back to it. Why did you pick? I mean, when we talk about Reckoning of the West, which is what issue 29 is all about, we examine things like, the development of a nonprofit project in the Crenshaw district of LA, the Oregon Trail, Western film. We kind of an array of examinations. Where does Zorro fit in kind of a reckoning of the West?
The idea for it was from the Jefe Blaze. He was the one who said,
Blaise
"Hey,
Barriga is our
yeah,
editorial director.
of
I
course, the
apologize.
Jefe, El Jefe. Well, El Jefe de Jefes is Will. Blaze is second Jefe. But yeah, he said, hey, we got this tip that there's this new Soto Amazon series, and we're doing this series about the reckoning of the West. And when we talk about the West and its heroes, Soto is an iconic. I mean, he is the hero coming out of California, and of course, anything Alta, of course, anything Zorro, yeah. So combining them both together, and honestly, I didn't know at first how was I going to tackle this. I had to see the series itself, and I'm like, am I going to do just the whole arc of Zorro? But most of my article focuses on the series itself and how it bucks a lot of the stereotypes of the past and how it's so much about the California of now, but also
Mhm.
the California of 1848 and everything. I'm telling you, it is such a special series. It's enjoyable, it's funny, it's sad, it's action packed. I and like typical, like, oh yeah, I'll just see it over the span of 2 weeks. I saw it in 2 days. And this is also while I'm busy with other things that I'm not going to talk about lest I get in trouble. But I totally binged it. It's so worth it. And it's such a part of the West. So it's such an honor to be part of this special package. And yeah, Zorro is as important as reckoning with, like, say, national monuments, as what's going on in LA, as what's going on in Utah. Zorro is the West. And more importantly, Zorro is the quintessential Californian.
Whoa. Zorro is the quintessential Californian. That is your takeaway quote from this
That's the headline for
conversation.
this when we
Yes.
post the conversation.
How about your wife's tienda? What does that mean?
Oh, tienda is store. Yeah. Alta
Oh,
Baja
Alta
Market.
Baja Market. We love.
Well,
We
we'll have to do another Alta book magazine release party there at Alta Baja Market sometime next year.
We will. Gustavo and I are going to talk my friend into profiling Delilah. So we're going to get on that as well. Gustavo Arellano, it is always a delight. Folks, if you have any chance to read Gustavo's work, always in Alta Journal, but at the LA Times, tune into the Gucci Gang on Tuesday nights. It is so much fun. Everything he does is just the tortilla contest. There's so much fun. Like Gustavo brings the fun and the energy. So I really encourage you to follow him on social, keep track of what he's doing, and read his work because he is a joy to work with, and it is really, really, as always, very fun talking to you, Gustavo. Thank you so much.
Gracias as always, Beth.
I want to, folks, invite you to, we're on a break next week for the holiday. Week after, Blaise Zariga, El Jefe, will be in conversation with Dagoberto Gilb. He's a fiction writer who's got a new collection of books, which includes Prima, a short story that originally appeared in Alta Journal. And so Dagoberto will be in conversation with Blaise. That's on December 4th here at Alta Live at 12:30. With that, it is storming and raining here in Northern California. I will leave the rest of you to it with, again, my deepest thanks to Gustavo and to all of you for tuning in today. Thanks, folks. Bye.